Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee. And I thought I would do kind of a coaching update and one of the lessons I've learned. But if you guys would please remember to click like down below if you enjoy these sort of videos, it would be greatly appreciated. But over to the point, I've picked up on some things with the coaching. And again, I'm always going to get some people in the comments who come up with this ludicrous idea. They're like, no one's actually hired you to coach them. But the truth is, if you guys go look at some of the surveys I've done, people actually clicked on the thing that I rejected their application. Okay, so if I've turned clients away, that means clearly people are applying. If their application was rejected, meaning I didn't want them as a client, meaning I didn't necessarily want their money, I wasn't really interested, right? And it's nothing personal, just not everyone's a good fit. So over to the point, one of the things I've noticed, and this is a pattern, and when I say it's a pattern, meaning more than one or two clients. In fact, off the top of my head, I've got 3 to 4 people in this category right now, who a lot of you would describe as what we would think of as skinny fat. And I don't mean the beginner skinny fat, I mean someone who's still skinny fat after training for a bit. And we would define skinny fat as someone who has maybe bulked above 20, they've gotten above 20% body fat, but they still haven't fully finished out their novice gains yet, right? And that's what we're talking about, because you'll see a lot of people who will say, yeah, well, we need novices, skinny novices to bulk up and gain fat. And you'll even hear guys like Ripto say that, right? Over at the starting strength guys, they'll say, yeah, they need to bulk up to 17, 18% body fat. And they'll say things like put on 30 pounds of body weight and get up to 18% body fat, okay? But you see a lot of people who take it so far that when they start getting their body fats checked, they're 24, 25, 28 on a DEXA scan. And these are guys who are still well under 200 pounds. Okay, so if you're above 20% body fat, and you weigh less than 180 pounds, okay, that's going to qualify as skinny fat. So what's going on with these people? What is the situation there? Because I actually have had several clients do this, and the thing is, it's like you'll take something like my novice programs. Every client that I have has run at least one of my programs at some point. Every single client I have has run one of my free programs. I don't think there's a single exception that I can think of off the top of my head. So that seems to be a reoccurring theme. Now, what's ended up happening, I've coached people on some of this before. I've actually coached a real life friend through pretty much my original novice program. I wrote the original Ice Cream Fitness 5x5 specifically for a friend of mine, coached him, and he hit big numbers really, really fast, right? What do I mean big numbers? He reached those novice strength goals in less than a year, okay? He did it in less than a year, and he did it without bulking. Now, people will say genetics, and I'm going to agree. The average person is not going to lose 20, 25, 30 pounds of body weight and smash my novice numbers in under a year. People say, well, he started strong. No, he started with a 65-pound max bench. Started with a 65-pound max bench and was doing sets of 5 with 225 within a year. Started with something less than 100, I think it was 120-pound deadlift. 120-pound max deadlift, 405 in less than a year. While losing weight, he lost weight. He dropped down to 190. So we look at that and people say, well, what's the difference? And why is it that when we go to different logs, we see people who just excelled? Right? You saw David Lade when he first started training around my novice 5x5. He excelled. A bunch of people who put up their routines, they excel. And here's one of the things that I've noticed a big difference. A lot of the people who drift in the direction of this, they're not particularly explosive. Meaning they lift weights slowly. Now, we could argue there could be a potential genetic component. There could be some epigenetics involved there. A lot of factors. Could be the way that they're approaching the bar. But one of the big things I've noticed, in general, they're not particularly explosive lifters. Well, if you're not lifting a weight explosively, what do you have to do to get enough hypertrophy? You got to do more volume. And what I generally find is that a lot of these people, when I look at how they had been training, a lot of times their training volumes were too low, right? Their total training volumes were too low. They were under training while overeating. Well, if you're under training while overeating, what's going to happen? You're going to gain muscle, but you're going to gain a lot of fat. But if you're only gaining muscle at half or a third of the rate that you should be, due to your training volume being too low, not reaching really your even sometimes barely your minimum effective volumes, sometimes below that, you're getting some progression, you're growing a little bit, but you gain weight relatively quickly, what's going to happen? Well, you're just going to get fat. And what do we mean quickly? If you're gaining 2 pounds a month of body weight, but your training itself, your total training loads are so low that you're only gaining half a pound of muscle, it's going to happen in 6 months. Well, in 6 months, you're going to have put on 3 pounds of muscle, yeah, and about 12 pounds of body fat. Well, what's that going to do for a lot of people? It'd be pretty bad. It'd be pretty bad. So their body fats kind of tend to go up after 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. And you'll see people who yo-yo with this a lot. And a lot of times what happens is that a lot of these people have gone through phases where their life made them back their training down, but they didn't lose the body fat that they accumulated. And they go back and bulk a little more, gain a little bit of muscle, gain more body fat with it. And sometimes it's that back and forth effect. And what I find with these people is that magically all of a sudden what happens when you take any of these people and you put them at caloric maintenance on a really high protein diet, and you start maximizing their total training volumes while still focusing on progressive overload. And I mean, and I've done this with people with more than one type of routine so far. I've had people do straight linear programs who can do it. And I've had people do it with even slight concurrent periodization. But the main thing is that their total training volume goes way up. Their supplemental lift volume goes up. I have a lot of these people who come in and do a large amount of posterior chain work, a large amount of back work, things like that. What ends up happening? Well, when you take people who are under training and they're doing 10 to 12 extra sets for their posterior chain every week, 10 to 12 sets of extra upper back work and rows and stuff, maximizing their training volumes of all their squatting, deadlifting, pressing, and accessories around them, and you start pushing them close to their recovery limits while programming progressive overload, depending on how you're periodizing, what happens? They start magically gaining muscle. And sometimes these are people who haven't gained any muscle in a year and have been sitting at 20-something% body fat. Well, even if you have them at maintenance calories, or in some cases a very small deficit, they start shedding body fat and they start recompositioning. But one of the trends that I've noticed with this thus far is that when you have people who are not particularly explosive, who have not therefore been using enough training volume, because someone who's fairly explosive are going to get jacked on a 5x5. A simple 5x5 program with a few basic lifts with hard progression for someone who can lift explosively, who is already kind of wired that way, they will stack on slabs of muscle. All right? They're going to gain a lot of muscle very quickly. Someone who isn't as explosive, whether it's the way that their level of aggressiveness, whether it's a genetic predisposition, people who are coming in lifting weights too controlled without a lot of bar speed, they're not getting super tight and they're not hammering that weight hard on every rep, what happens? Well, if they don't get enough training volume in and enough supplemental lifts in, guess what? They grow dramatically slower. And if you're growing dramatically slower and you're overeating, you're bulking, you're gaining mostly fat. And it very quickly creates a skinny fat phenomenon. And what you end up with is that guys who are getting up to well over 20% body fat, who still have a 200 bench, who still have a 250 squat, who have a 280 deadlift, right? It's exactly what I've seen, and I've seen it in some of the clients, and then we adjust all that training, and then magically they just start recompositioning. But it is a common trend, and I've seen at least 3 direct cases of this so far in my own clients. And these are all people with at least 2 years of gym experience. And then magically, all of a sudden, they're PRing, they're getting leaner, they're gaining muscle, losing body fat. Without bulking, right? Just take them down to maintenance. And in a few cases, like I said, a small deficit. So here's the take home from this. People who are getting skinny fat, it's usually a case of people who are not explosive. They are not able to generate maximum force on every rep, who are just therefore not training enough while overeating in a calorie surplus. Right? That's a bad combination. And that's what I'm noticing tends to create this effect. And so 2 different people on the exact same program, but due to their genetics and the execution of the lifts, one of them is getting optimized training volumes and growing like a weed. The other is way under training. They're both in a surplus. One gets jacked and one just gets fat. On the same program, even on possibly the same caloric surplus. Alright guys, well that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.